Okay, so here we're going to work on some scars and cuts that you apply just to plastics. This is a sheet of plastic. I've got some already done, so you can see kind of what the goal is. Now you can use a binder or anything plastic, a cutting board even. This is just some plastic sheet I had laying around. You don't want to use paper. That'll be a problem. That'll pull up and be nasty and not work. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a slightly different way to do a cut. It involves tissue as well, and really the same principle. We're just going to layer up a couple layers of tissue and cut through it physically with scissors. You can technically do this method on your face, but I really don't advise you taking scissors directly to your face. Lots of people on YouTube do it. It's probably fine, but it's hard and it's pokey. All right, so I like that shape. That's going to be the largest piece of my cut. And same kind of strategy as everything we did on the face. Lay down a base layer of latex to stick your tissue to. And stick your tissue on there and do better than I did here. I think I got some wrinkles in that. You want to work with a really wet Q-tip. If you're trying to push it around, don't try to make the latex go too far. Just keep it nice and wet and goopy. It'll start to drag really bad if it's dry. Once I've got that all saturated, I will take my metal spoon. You really should have a stainless steel spatula for makeup, but I don't have one. And now doesn't seem like the time to get one. So there's me smoothing it out as best I can. And we're happy with that. All right, now turn the sheet around and we're gonna do some other things. The first thing we're gonna do is I'm gonna try an atrophic scar here. That's the sunken one. I'm gonna use a slightly different method than the way I did on the forehead. This is the scar that probably evades me the most, that I have trouble doing with latex. And there's a product called rigid collodium that you just paint on your face and it sort of like shrinks and sinks your skin all by itself. And it's really easy to use. It stinks, but it's sort of a specialty product and not something you're likely to be able to find on the fly. And here I'm just kind of warping that piece of tissue so that it's not a perfectly straight scar. If it's perfectly straight, it's probably gonna look a little fake. And here's the other side. So I'm doing this much like I did the cut to start with. I'm going to make 2 layers, the cut on the face. So I'm going to make 2 layers, fold them in half to give myself like a little opening. And then they've got like a really smoothly tapered edge down to your sort of blending plane. So get those situated the way you like. And just like everything else, lay down some latex. Stick paper in latex. Again, do better than me. I get some wrinkles in there. Nice wet Q-tip. And then go ahead and do the other side. And with this atrophic type of scar, like I said, we want it to be pretty close together. So I just want it to look like where the cut has knit together and there's like a little crater in the skin. We're gonna come back later and cover this whole thing with a single piece of tissue to sort of smooth this out. So this is sort of like an underlayer of structure that we're actually gonna make smoother later. So use my metal spatula to keep it smooth. Metal spatula, it's a spoon. Pull away any excess latex, but make sure you remove it from the spoon or the excess latex will cause you problems down the line. Keep the spoon clean. You can use the point of the spoon to pull the ridges apart too. Now we're gonna do some flower stuff, kind of like we did on the forehead. The benefit of working on plastic, one of the benefits, is that you have a longer working time. So stuff like working with the thickened latex with flour is a little bit easier. So I poured my flour in. I use still use the end of a brush because the Q-tip and the flour causes kind of a gummy mess. It's kind of a gummy mess anyway, but too gummy, too messy. Mix it up and get a big blob at the end of your brush, just like we did on the forehead. But now we're gonna do it on plastic. So this is a keloid scar on plastic. And I'm just spinning the brush to get it off. And you get this lovely little skin worm. You can make a big one or a small one. Sometimes these keloid scars are more blobby, and sometimes they're like a line. They come in all kinds of shapes and sizes. So whatever your research suggests. And this is another this could be a burn or like the inside of a cut or any place where super gross texture. This could also be like really bad acne scarring or anything like that. So this is just kind of stippled out like a little stucco concrete effect to make like a little latex bumpy texture. You can kind of sculpt it and shape it and get it into whatever shape you want. Here, a lot of times on keloid scars and scars in general, you see these little sort of strings that come down that look like it's sort of spider web knitted to the skin. So I'm trying to give it some of that effect here with the edge of the spoon. And make sure it's still wet. You have much longer working time with plastic, but make sure it's still wet. And we are happy with that. Make the shape of this a little more irregular. And now we've let that dry and we're gonna do our second layer on that cut. So there's my tissue for that. Lay it down in the latex. I did a better job this time, no wrinkles. The tissue sort of starts dissolving the second the latex hits it, much like toilet paper does when you hit it with anything wet. So that can help smooth out any irregularities, and it's also what makes it a really good product for this. Actual paper is too rigid, too stiff, too sturdy. You want something really soft and mushy like toilet paper. You can use the spoon part of the spoon to smooth things out. I just like the shape of the end of this one. If you don't have a spoon with an end that you like, you can use the spoon end of the spoon. And I'm going to do a second layer over these. One that's going to give me a little bit of a blendable edge. You see I'm pulling it out past the edge of the scar. And this is just with plain latex. It's also going to smooth any bumps and things that are a little too bumpy. I'm using plenty of latex so the latex can kind of pool in tiny crevices and help smooth it out a little bit. Now you see I've got a piece of tissue at the top there that I'm going to lay over this scar in its entirety. The first thing I do is I'm going to get that bed of latex down. Bed of latex, tissue, saturate with more latex. You can see that piece of tissue over the top kind of knits the scar together as one continuous thing. So it all looks like it's going to help it look like it's all part of your skin as opposed to a gaping wound. Smooth it with your spoon, your spoonchula. And third layer on the cut on the bottom. You see I'm working on the cut on the bottom. I've got my tissue, lay it in a bed of latex, and saturate it in latex. So this is just made like a smooth blob. And you'll see when we remove it from the plastic how it becomes a cut. On this, I'm putting a smoothing layer of latex over the top, just like I did on the 2 scars below it. And I'm putting another layer on those scars just because I have to wait for things to dry. And generally with appliances, several layers appliances that you make to sort of transfer to your face, several layers is going to be a lot more sturdy. And I'm applying a smoothing layer once that third layer was dry to this scar as well. All right, now that everything is dry, I am going to powder these scars. Powder is really, really important, especially with these. The powder is going to help it release and not stick to itself. If you try to pull these up without powdering them, you'll end up with sort of a gummy ball of latex. Now, starting to get it peeled, I like to use something sharp. Use the scissors. I'm using the back end of an X-Acto blade, not the front end, because I don't want to cut the latex. I just want to lift it up, and I want to make sure I'm going at the very edge. Once I get a little bit lifted up, then I can start to use my fingers to lift. And I'm brushing powder underneath it as I'm lifting to make sure that nothing gets sticky. And I want to keep those fine little feathered edges sort of spidery. And if there's a hole in the edges, that really doesn't matter. That's totally fine. It helps it blend. You can see I've got it off there now. Now I've got some bits of the little feathered edges that are curling up, and I'm never going to be able to stick that to my skin beautifully. So I'm going to trim those off while still not getting into the thick part. I want to stay well away from where the paper starts. So I come in with you'll need really sharp scissors to do this. Latex is super hard to cut. And I want to cut in a kind of irregular fashion because I want the edge of it to stay sort of amoeba shaped because that's going to blend better. If you have any straight lines on prosthetics, they tend to be really obvious. So always have your blendable edge be some sort of scalloped amoeba shape. When you buy prosthetics from the store, you'll see that they have like little scalloped edges for that reason. And one of the advantages of this is you can make up like 20 of these scars. Like let's say it was a road show or something. They don't last that long. You can only use them a couple times and then they get just nasty at the edges. But you can make these up ahead of time. You don't need any like special casting supplies to do that. They won't all be exactly the same, but they'll be close enough. So I'm powdering these and then carefully removing those so you can see that process. This is about patience. It looks easy here because I sped the video up to 400%, but you want to make sure that you just take your time with this stuff. See how I'm using powder to push underneath it so that it gets powdered immediately. And I'd have to trim these up too. Now this is the cut, the last thing I'm going to show you here with these prosthetics on plastic. Peel that up, get the powder underneath there. It's a little harder to peel up because that 3 layers of tissue make it quite tough. All right, looks good. Just looks just like a little skin-shaped bump. And I'm gonna lay it down and I'm gonna draw where I wanna put the cut. That's my brown eye pencil, which I use a lot for sort of marking things on my face. That's where I want the cut to go. And to get the cut started, I kind of fold it in half. And usually the back end of the scissors is sharper, so I start just get a little bit of cut there and then open it up. Because then I'll be able to push the scissors all the way through and do the cut. I'm gonna check that on my skin, see if I like it. Happy with that, but I want the lips of the cut to peel back some more, so I'm sort of shaping those, bending those, and pulling those open. You can even cut a little bit away like I'm doing here if you want it to be really open. All just depends on how you want your cut to look. Okay, now I'm going to show you how you're going to stick one of these appliances on your skin. So I've got that little atrophic scar that I made, and I decide where I'm going to put it and mark that out with my brown pencil. Doesn't have to be perfect. That's going to give me a guide for where to put my spirit gum. This is a good idea for any time you're putting an appliance on your face. Mustache, scar, anything. Give yourself a guide to where you put spirit gum. And you want an even layer. It doesn't need to be super thick. If it's super thick, it just takes longer to dry. You just want to make sure you get it everywhere. You have to wait for spirit gum to dry. It should not feel wet. It should feel sticky and tacky. So we are waiting, and it's still wet. So I'm having a little puppet show with my Q-tips. They're dancing. Everything's happy. Yay. Is it dry? Nope, still wet. So we're having a sword fight. Somebody dies, and he's happy. And Q-tip gets the girl. Yay! Is it dry now? It's tacky. You can kind of see my skin being pulled with a little bit. That shows you that it's starting to be tacky. It also makes this sort of like noise when you pull your finger away. That's when you know it's starting to get tacky. And that dabbing that I do, that actually helps it get tacky. So you can do that to make it dry faster and get tacky faster, but your finger will get very sticky. So carefully lay that down. Make sure I don't got any, make sure I don't have any folds at the edges. Pull it a little bit to make sure it's nice and smoothly on your skin. You want to push hard all the way around to get good contact. You can tell where I've got good contact here because the latex goes clear. And then some of the little edges that aren't down, I'm taking a little bit more spirit gum. And I should wait, but I didn't here. And then I'm smoothing those down with a Q-tip. That blendable edge is really critical. And you're going to wait for that to dry. Once it's dry, you take your powder. Always powder. Powder helps the foundation blend in with your skin because these things are not skin textured. Latex is not porous at all. That's why we use it for the things we use it for, like gloves and other things. And now we have foundation. And again, I always recommend, especially to scars, applying with a brush because it's going to help you push it into areas. Otherwise, it'll look kind of haphazardly done. You cannot use a sponge on latex. It just doesn't work well, for the base layer anyway. So get my foundation in. And now I'll start to add some paint. First thing is just pink up the skin a little bit. Sorry, I have my arm out of the shot here, but you'll see it in a second. Pink up the skin a little bit, shows some irritation and coloration. Also just makes the skin look like the rest of your skin. If you look at my hand, you can see I've got red spots and whiter spots and yellower spots on my hand. So it just makes it look like part of your body. And that's blending pretty well. And then I'm going to take some brown and I'm going to really lightly put it in the crease of the scar. And I'm going to clean my brush off and kind of blend that out with some foundation. Scars aren't all that dark. And here I'm pulling some out from the edge to make it look like it's kind of got some knitted looks as the skin's pulled into it. And we're happy with that. Now, one little bonus thing that I always show people but have not done yet is a simple fresh burn. This is so easy. Just put a layer of latex on your skin and then let it dry. Once it's dry, you can hardly see it, but I'm going to take something like a pencil or something sharp but not stabby and kind of work it up till I get like a point little hole that I can kind of poke in the latex. You can see there I've lifted some of the middle of the latex up from where I put it on my skin. And if you're having trouble poking through it, latex is remarkably hard to tear. You can take some scissors and cut through it. You don't want to cut it out, you just want to cut through it a little bit. Do not stab yourself, do not cut yourself. Once I've got a hole like that, I can just kind of peel it back and give myself the look of a burn blister that has popped. And then it just needs a little paint. I start by painting the inside of it red, but just around the ring. And how red it is depends on how irritated and upset your burn is. And then I do yellow in the middle. Sort of look like skin as opposed to, burns don't usually bleed, but they get real red. And then a red ring of irritation. Blend that out. It doesn't have to be super irritated. I'm going to put some foundation on here to kind of blot that out. And there is my burn.